So the Trump-China trade war is ramping up as now we have some statements coming from China and also some demands for the USA. That's the subject of today's video, and these are the headlines. China open to talks if US shows respect, names point person. And the basic gist of it is USA, if you want to talk with China, you got to show some more respect. And we don't actually want to talk to Trump, assign someone else. And for me, this basically signals that she doesn't want to talk to Trump at all, which is pretty interesting. You also have this Trump administration levies up to a 245% tariff on China. So it's getting even more crazy from the US perspective. And then you have this headline: China tells US to stop whining over tariffs as it reports GDP growth. This is the actual statement from China. It was issued in the China Daily. It says the US is not getting ripped off by anybody. The problem is the US has been living beyond its means for decades. It consumes more than it produces. It has outsourced its manufacturing and borrowed money in order to have a higher standard of living than it's entitled to based on its productivity. Rather than being, quote, cheated, the US has been taking a free ride on the globalization train. The US should stop whining about itself being a victim in global trade and put an end to its capricious and destructive behavior. Basically, they say US here, but it's really directed at Trump. And to be fair, you could make the case that this is also hitting on US culture, saying like you consume more than you produce, you're borrowing a bunch of money than what you can afford, right? I mean, and you guys know this. You guys know how American culture is. I'm not saying outrageous. Like people borrow money, the American government borrows money, right? American consumer borrows money. That's just part of the system. It's all based on credit. It's a house of cards, to be perfectly frank. And this is something that's been going on for a long time. And then they take a direct hit at Trump, saying the U.S. isn't getting ripped off by anybody, because Trump all day, every day likes to say that U.S. and other countries are ripping off, or other countries, I should say, are ripping off the U.S. This was a statement earlier by Karen Levitt, and I showed it in the previous video, but I'll read it again if you guys haven't heard it. For coming from the White House, they say China needs to make a deal with us. We don't have to make a deal with them. There's no difference between China and any other country except they are much larger. What's not stated here, but what she did say was something like, and I played in the last video, but Karen Levitt said, China needs our money. But I told you guys before in the last video where China's like, we've existed for 5,000 years and there was no United States. And after United States, we're going to exist for 5,000 years more. So you have two different, things, messages coming from both sides. China also says this from the foreign ministry. If the U.S. really wants to resolve the issue through dialogue and negotiation, it should stop exerting extreme pressure, stop threatening and blackmailing, and talk to China on the basis of equality, respect, and mutual benefit. So it's very interesting because you guys know this. Trump is a basically mob boss kind of mentality. He wants everyone to kiss the ring. China's like, yo, you may think you're the mob boss, but we're going to show you who the real boss is. Show us some respect. So that's kind of an interesting dialogue there. And I want to read some more details of stuff. You don't actually ever hear so much details of these things in this way, because you're going to see that China has very specific demands, kind of stuff you may expect, regarding Taiwan, technology, also. They want essentially to have the deals hashed out before Trump and Xi were to ever meet, so they don't really have to talk that much. Just do a paper, a signing ceremony. Let's read some more. You guys see what I'm saying. It says China wants to see a number of steps from President Donald Trump's administration before it will agree to trade talks, right? So basically, hash out everything before we even begin, including showing more respect by reining in disparaging remarks by members of his cabinet. So get your people in line, under control. And this is like, essentially two gangsters talking to each other, right? You guys know this. So you have this meeting and there's some lackey, spouting off his mouth, and like the boss is like, "You better get that, dog under a leash." You guys know this, and this is what it is. It's like it's crazy to read it in this way. Also says other conditions include more consistent U.S. positions, so stop waffling, Donald, and a willingness to address China's concerns around America's sanctions. Okay, so don't cut off chips. That's basically what that's about, and Taiwan. That's a very contentious issue, in my opinion. I think Donald's going to try to sell out Taiwan, in my opinion. I think that's a big mistake. I think the U.S. should stay engaged with Taiwan. Obviously, this is a very sensitive topic for those of you who are familiar with this issue. The basic gist of it is Taiwan's kind of in a limbo status. It's not going to be able to get independence, but it's not going to be able to join China. It's going to be kind of in the middle. China, from their point of view, they would just want it to join the motherland, right? And there's a lot of dialogue in that if you live in China. Very, very hot topic. People are very passionate about it. In USA, people don't really care that much. I'll just be honest with you, they don't. But from a security standpoint and the U.S. government standpoint, they've made a lot of promises, and the people in Taiwan would want their independence. Now, theoretically, Taiwan could determine their own fate and just say, hey, you know what, we're just going to claim independence, and at that point it would be up to China, like, do we want to go to war or not, and then would USA defend them or not. And we've the USA, that is, has been engaged in Asia for quite a long time, be it in Japan, be it in Korea, Philippines, and so the Taiwan question is always a question, and so that's why they've kind of been in limbo, to where let's not push either side to force anyone's hand. So I always say that's a sensitive issue because it is. And the other thing is with in the China situation, oftentimes when they want to rile up sort of local people support, they start banging the drums on that, right? It's a wag the dog kind of thing. So, and I know there's a lot of the talk with that. That's a whole other issue. I just want to mention that that is on the table. In my opinion, I think Trump will probably sell out Taiwan. In my opinion, which I think is a mistake. Beijing also wants the U.S. to appoint a point person for talks, who has the president's support and can help prepare a deal that Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping can sign when they meet. The person said. So basically, the Chinese will assign their person, the U.S. will sign their person, so they'll have, like, these two people with authority to make deals. And then when everything's all hashed out, then Trump and Xi Jinping will do an official signing. Now, this is just the reality. Trump doesn't have good people, so I I don't think Trump would get a good deal on this, to be perfectly frank. They don't want to talk to Trump. Trump's an awful business person, plus he's erratic, and they don't want to talk to him anyway. And so, who's Trump going to sign for this thing? I'll tell you this: it's kind of interesting. Xi Jinping went to the school Tsinghua where I used to teach. Trump and I also went to the same school. I lived and worked in China. Like, theoretically, you could send someone like myself to do these kind of things, but I'm not aligned with the Trump people, so I'm not. I wouldn't get involved. They wouldn't talk to me anyway to ask me to do it. They'll find someone, but I'm willing to bet, though, that whoever Trump picks is not going to be qualified. That's going to fall in line with all his other appointments. Like, their people are just awful. So I don't have much confidence in Trump getting a good, quote, deal. That's again my opinion on this stuff, but I'm just call it as I see it. Also says here, according to the person familiar with Beijing's thinking, the most important precondition for talks is that Chinese officials need to know such engagement will be conducted with respect, which is matters. Don't talk down to China, right? Understand that we have our needs, etc., and don't think that you're the boss of me, kind of thing. Respect. While the president has been relatively dovish when speaking publicly about Xi, other members of his administration have been more hawkish, leaving officials in Beijing unsure of the U.S. position. So, too much waffling, and they're referring to J.D. Vance. If you guys want to watch my last video on that, you can. But basically, J.D. Vance referred to Chinese people as peasants, and not an appropriate thing for a American official to be saying. And then after that, Vance and the U.S. were getting trolled from that. Also says here, China also wants the U.S. to address its national security concerns, particularly over Taiwan. Person said, Beijing claims the self-governing island as part of its territory and has pledged to take steps, including military action if necessary, to protect these claims. China will not undertake any provocative actions on Taiwan, the person said, but it will respond if provoked. So they're always kind of vague on that. The thing is with China, Chinese people are very patriotic, and if the Chinese government wanted to, they could convince all these people to, hey, we're going to take Taiwan. Let's swim there and get there. I mean, seriously, they could convince people to fight for this thing, and the problem is, it's just there's so many lives that would be lost if there were a war there. So this I'm always um, preach caution. Is a good way to say it when you talk about any of this kind of stuff. I know we make jokes about these kind of things, but this kind of stuff that would be, or would it be World War III, or Frank? So let's hope nothing ever comes to that. And like I said, Taiwan just may be in limbo status for, the next 100 years or whatever. And if that's the way to maintain peace, that's the way to do it. Also says here, finally, Beijing also wants the U.S. to designate a point person to oversee talks. The person said, China has no preference for whom that is, but they want the person to be clearly speaking and acting with Trump's authority, right? So send someone over. We don't want to talk to Trump, but just make sure they have some power, because what's been going on lately with the trade talks on Trump's side is like they send people, and the people that the Trump people send is just basically listen and try to solicit offers from other countries, but the U.S. isn't really giving much feedback. It just feels like they don't have any plan in the USA, and then plus they just have a bunch of lackeys and unqualified people. It's a mess from the U.S. side. To be perfectly frank, and it's, to me, I'll just be honest with you guys. I feel shame about what's happening in USA. We want, and this is just reality, regardless of who's in power, regardless if Republican or Democrat. Oftentimes for these kind of things, you just want the best people you can find, right? Let the people choose whatever politics, but be it your military, your intel, these kind of things. Uh, don't make all this stuff political appointments. Find the people who are good at these things. Find the people who can speak the language, know the culture. I know it may sound crazy, but this is what they do sometimes with these Trump people. They'll pick someone who's like has no experience in whatever country they're sent to, be it to set up an embassy, be it a diplomat. No area studies, no idea of the country's history, can't speak the language, and it's just the whole thing is ridiculous. So I who are they going to send? We'll find out. But I don't have much faith in Trump, to be honest. China's already making all kinds of moves with multiple countries, and they're pulling ahead. I mean, it's obvious. I can see it. It also says here, Chinese officials also understand that Trump may want to personally lead the negotiations, right? So they say, well, we know Trump going to want to come to the party, but Trump's not invited, basically. While Beijing would be flattered by Trump wanting to invest his time to such discussion, the person said, China believes the best way forward is for officials designated by the two presidents to oversee the talks. So basically, we know you want to come, Trump. We're very flattered that you want to come, but you're not invited. Just send one of your people. We'll send one of our people, and we'll figure it out. So, and the way you do that is then Trump doesn't have too much shame, right? So it's not like Xi talking to one of Trump's people. We'll send people and figure it out at a time, and then when Xi and Trump meet, we'll pretend to like each other. We'll smile and go our merry ways. Trump will come away thinking that it's a political victory, like a fool, and Xi will play Trump. That's how this is going to play out. And effectively, any world leader can play Trump like a flute. I mean, any one of these. It's embarrassing, to be perfectly frank. And what's even more embarrassing is the people who like Trump can't see how horrible he is. But I'm just telling you that, I mean, China's literally putting Trump in his place here with this stuff. Then it says here, that would be the most effective way to ensure that negotiations culminate in a meaningful summit between Trump and Xi. You also got this. China's trying to make more relationship with the EU. They've been talking about this a long time, also with Southeast Asia. And basically, the way Trump is playing this out is Trump basically just frankly looks like a bully, a rogue, wild, crazy person. And then China can be like, hey, come with us to the sane side, and we'll do business with you. China is surprised on their GDP. There was a interesting deal that happened recently. There's two things that are connected I want to show you guys. So one was, because remember, the USA is trying to say, oh, you guys need us more than we need you, and then China's like, fine, we're not buying Boeing. We'll see who needs who, right? And then on the piggyback of that, then suddenly out of quote thin air, Russia's saying, hey, how about we buy those Boeing jets? So I'm not sure what's gonna happen with that. That's a new one for me. That one just popped up today. And then this goes back to will USA and Trump show respect with China, and how will this play out? That's what's going on. Love to hear your thoughts on this, and I'll catch you on the next video.